Hello, welcome to the YouTube series on the beginning of the Tiripini circuit. I am Rudolf Hertle. My father was the first Lutheran missionary to enter the Wiru area. I am here to tell you the story. This part is called First Baptism, Part 1. After my parents came back from furlough in 1968, they observed that the progress of the baptismal classes. They had a problem because they only had 5 evangelists to give lessons for people in 9 villages. These villages were Kawo, Leka, Koya, Yungili, Pondi, Pokolo, Bolona, Kulipini and Pondia. They reasoned that they would not have enough teachers to do the job. This picture shows evangelists together with others from distant villages. So they decided to train local men to teach the classes. These men were given a special training in literacy courses and in religious instruction. Every week they came to the station and were schooled for a half a day. When they went back to their villages, they passed their lessons on to the baptismal classes in their respective villages. These men were called miti workmen. It so happened that the traditional village leaders volunteered to do this work. My father gave much thought to the question, when would be the appropriate time for the first baptism in a new area? He reasoned that if it was done too soon, the people would not understand what it meant. But if he waited too long, the people would get tired of waiting. He therefore aimed at a period of time in between. And with the help of these miti workmen, he would be able to finish classes by 1970. The date was therefore set for the 29th of May 1970. Besides the classes, much preparation was needed for such a big occasion. People had to plant extra food. The temporary village had to be constructed for all the participants and visitors. The long houses were constructed in the manner that the people had used earlier when they had big pig festivities. They also needed a construction for material, grass for roofing, extra firewood, stones for mumu. All this had to be fetched from far away. Extra houses were constructed for special guests. The church was also renovated. A special platform was constructed for the altar and for the baptismal ceremony as such. A scaffolding was erected for the pulpit, and as the ceremony was to be an open-air ceremony, seat benches for the visitors were built. Meanwhile, months before, my mother had worked together with 4 wives of evangelists to sew the special baptismal garments. She cut every garment herself, and the women sewed them together. The aim was to give each person a white garment, regardless of income. Some people had very little cash. The village members pooled in to pay for the material. Some villages sold nuts in Mount Hagen to finance the purpose. On the whole, my mother documented that she had cut 3,000 garments for the following baptisms in further villages. This picture shows mother's original scissors. Apart from these logistic preparations, the baptismal candidates needed to be examined and pass the test. and during the last weeks they therefore moved to Tiripini and lived in the newly constructed houses, because some villages were as far away as 2 hours walk distance. Last preparations were then met: the examination, the personal confession, the instruction on the details of the service. Alone, the personal confession lasted 4 days. Then came the question which name each candidate should receive. In New Guinea, it is custom that candidates receive a Christian name. Each candidate received a Christian name. The name has a big meaning for the individual in wiru society. As no Christian names ever existed, they had to be invented. My parents counted the number of newly created names. They came to a list of 520. In many cases, the evangelist had to help the people to find adequate Christian names. And I'll give you just a few examples. Vendiku means I am happy. Alkenea means he said. Aopea means help. No more, take me. Liria, follow me. The girl who helped my parents in the house now has the name Lipuko. He makes a covenant. The weeks before the occasion were filled with concentrated work. Then at last the important day came. On Thursday the 28th of May, the guests of honor were welcomed. Bishop Dr. John Kuda, Reverend Dieter Geisler and his wife, the district president of the lay district, Gedisa. The other guests came the next day from Yalibu, Wabi and other areas. The guests were escorted from the airstrip to the first fence. When the fence fell down, dancers escorted the guests to the second fence. When that was lifted, they were welcomed by a guard of honor of baptismal candidates, bearing flowers and palm leaves. They escorted the guests to the ceremonial grounds where the congregation had formed a big circle around a crude hut. Then followed a sketch. 2 men smeared with mud stood there symbolizing the deceased. The evangelist asked, "Where are your brothers?" A man from the audience answered, "They have died and are probably buried in the hut." The evangelist found the 2 men in the hut, woke them up, washed them, and thus brought them back to life. The message was clear. Here's another sketch. 2 groups of men from the villages of Poroko and Kawa, who were enemies, insulted each other. They accused each other of performing sanguma, death sorcery, and in the course killing members of the other clan. The controversy rose to a battle. The evangelist jumped in the middle of the battle and brought peace. The message was understood. And then some older men showed the congregation cult stones, which they had kept, and explained their use in earlier times. All of these objects were thrown in a fire and burnt, the sign that they were now past. The demonstration of the past had come to a close. The congregation was given a break, and guests were given refreshments. After an hour, the second stage started. The cross was carried to the church and placed on the roof. The evangelist Naaman, who had made the 2 crosses, he came and went with the crowd. Erecting the cross on the church is a big matter in a Lutheran church in Papua New Guinea. In Tiripini it was performed as follows. The evangelist met in the front row of the house of the missionary and then carried the cross to the church while singing hymns. There, the missionary, as a representative of the overseas churches, handed the cross over to the evangelist from the coastal region where the gospel had first arrived. They, in turn, handed it over to the evangelists of the highland regions. They, in turn, gave it to the evangelists of Yaribu, and then the evangelists of Yaribu gave it to the people in Tiripini, and at last it was placed in the hands of the local congregation members. They stood in a circle around the cross and shouted for joy. The cross! The gospel has arrived. Now we have it. We are grateful and we give thanks. Then the people from the village Karane and other villages came and took the cross in their hands, with the meaning that the next baptism would be celebrated in their own villages. Only then was the cross fixed to the church, and the other cross was taken to the temporary construction where the baptism would be held next day, and it was fixed there. The whole ceremony was embedded in hymns and prayers. The setting was ready for the big day to come, the baptism. This will be our second to last YouTube. Be sure to watch. Baptism Part 2. Okay, see me then.